We all have our vote independently. We all have our own opinions, and there's no way that any one or two of us intend in any way to not voice our individual opinions.
Jerry?
Well, I think I'm the best, so you can think of that whatever you want. But the other candidates can pretty much do whatever they want. I know there's a lot of background and backroom politicking going on, and it's kind of like, well, you got to live with that. Whether it's right or wrong, it happens. It happens all the time. So you just have to live with it and just keep doing your thing. I just try and tell everyone what I think and what I feel. And sometimes I may shoot myself in the foot because maybe I say things out loud that I shouldn't say. But hey, I still think I'm the best one, so thank you.
I'm the best one. Certainly it came across as a slate. And for anybody who was here, we're all intelligent people. You could read it as you wish.
Well, anyone can say whatever they want. After all, it's a free country, and if they want to express their viewpoint, they're certainly entitled to do that. However, what comes out of your mouth kind of reflects on the kind of person you are and the kind of candidate you're going to be. For candidate A to endorse candidate B, and candidate B to endorse candidate A, either there's one of two options. Either they colluded beforehand to do that, which makes this a very political thing and not something that's done in the best interest of Siena, or they decided after listening to all of us talk and express our positions that they reached a conclusion about which candidate they would prefer. In that case, they basically made a decision based on incomplete evidence, because certainly they hadn't a chance to read our flyers, they hadn't had a chance to ask us questions about our positions. So for them to go and make that decision and announce it publicly was reflecting a poor decision-making process that I think reflects poorly on their candidacy for the board.
Arm.
The question I heard from what happened last night, when some positive statements were made, are you two a team? Are you going to vote as a block? Well, that's nonsense. I mentioned that I know three of the candidates well, Don, Harvey, and Paul. I know them well enough to know they have very independent minds and would independently vote. And I also value their opinions and their dedication to Siena. Any one of us would be independent in our thinking and would be a good board member. Thank you.
Next question, please. And we will start with Jerry in answer.
I'm Sheila Schwartz, 4162 Augusta Luna Place, and I have a question. Some of you have said that you attend chats with the board. I'd like to know how often you've gone and why you go to those chats.
I go irregularly to the chats. I will say that, for example, the board meetings, that's probably going to be, if I get elected, that's probably going to be the worst thing for me, because the board meetings, I think, are worse than watching paint dry. I don't think they are run as quite as efficiently as they could be and should be. And basically, for anybody that lives here to go to the board meeting, it's really boring, because they don't have any input into it. The chats I have gone, like I said, irregularly, and I just retired completely this last July, so I wasn't able to make a lot of those because I was, running off working here and there, even though it was part-time. But I have gone to a number of them, and some good ideas come up there. And I can go into some of that later on because, well, I don't know, well, that's all right. We'll go into that later on.
Harvey?
I started because of rumors, and rumors. Unfortunately, today, I absolutely forgot about the coffee with the chat. The only time I'm not there is when I'm off the grounds of Sienna. I go because in scheduled meetings, you're only allowed 3 minutes to get up on the microphone. I have a problem with the fact that our finance committee meetings, you're not allowed to get up at the very end of the meeting. The chats with the board lasts an hour. There's a full airing of people's issues, complaints, problems, and you get to understand what the board is thinking or not thinking. Many times it's not thinking. And you get to understand what's troubling fellow homeowners here. And it could be anything from the ugly situation of rats because of the building across the road to situations in their home and not being listened to or their problems not being taken care of by the management. So that's why I go to those meetings. And I have been a very frequent attendee of committee meetings and board chat meetings.
Bernard?
Well, of course, as a board member, I frequently attended the chats. When I decided not to run for the board in 2014, for the 2015 year, I basically took time off and really kind of got away from what was going on because I needed to kind of take and assess things, other interests that I had, and other directions I felt I wanted to go. However, toward the end, toward like July, August, September, I noticed that things were not going well with this board. So I did attend one of the chat sessions to basically gauge the level of discontent within the community and how things were going, and also to talk to some of the board members about my concerns about what I felt was being done wrong and why they weren't basically analyzing what they could have done better to improve their performance.
Arn?
I go to all the chats, as many as I can. The board members that do come tell us that the chats are a way they can find out what's on the minds of residents. That's a good thing. The residents that come see the chats as an informal setting in which they can ask the board what are they thinking about, different issues that are of interest to them. Sometimes new ideas are expressed. It was at one of the chats that the idea of an ad hoc committee looking at communities like ours around the country was born. Sometimes suggestions are made that make it to the board to consider. Sometimes suggestions are made that make it to Michael Newvall's projects of things to do. For me, the chats are often a time to learn more information. For example, at a recent chat, some residents complained that they saw the landscape design that was posted up in the rotunda as kind of a fait accompli presented by Jaramillo. Not so, said the board members at the chat. Different designs were considered, and even in the final design, they asked Jaramillo, change this aspect, or change that aspect, and they did. I didn't know that. And it made me feel better that we did have significant input into that final design presented. That's why I go to the chats. I get additional information. I wish all of you could be at all these chats. Sometimes we even feel more confident that we know what we're doing. Thank you.
Paul?
As a member of the property committee, I've arranged to be available every Wednesday for the last year and a half so that I can be prepared to be ready for the issues for the property committee. Unfortunately, I've worked part-time the last 2 years, and I've traveled to 4 trade shows. I travel out east 4 or 5 times, and the customers, and Tuesdays are the day that I travel, so that I can be back in time for the property committee. I also write large proposals for machine systems. Good news is, next week I retire after 50 years, and I'll be able to attend the chats. I enjoy it. I went to a couple of the chats, and it's very informative and very informal. And quite frankly, I found it to be very informational. So I think from now on, after next week, I'll be going to the chats.
Thank you. Next questioner.
Gentlemen, if elected, can you see to it and vote to maintain our beautiful, highly rated senior community without constantly making changes, destroying the beauty that we bought into, spending money leading to dues increases, and realizing that we are not like other communities? We have extremely limited space in Siena.
This question will start with Harvey.
Well, it's a question that has many, many aspects to it. First of all, in terms of increases in the assessment, the proposed budget for 2016 does not include an increase in the assessment. However, I would suggest to all of you to come to the next board meeting. One of our board members presented to the Finance Committee a proposal to raise the assessment by $5 and then to put that money into the water reserve, where it's been touted that we've been saving thousands of gallons of water and thousands and thousands of dollars in money. So, you know, I'm raising the red flag for you. Maybe they'll kill it in their executive board meeting, but that's the proposal for the next meeting. In terms of spending, I'm one that will not spend money that doesn't have to be spent. I'll check every detail before okaying spending on something that's either frivolous, or if it has to be repaired, replaced, or replenished according to the NRS rules, yes, that's what will keep our properties up and our values up.
Dawn?
Well, you know, things change. I'm not the same person I was 10 years ago, neither is anyone else. You have to expect it and live with it. Nothing's going to stay the same. The idea is to husband your resources, make sure that the basic underlying principles that you bought into are still being adhered to, and not worry whether the color is not quite to your liking. The main thing is the overall attraction of Siena is still there from my viewpoint. Others may disagree with me, but I think we've done a good job in maintaining it. We've also done a good job in not increasing dues. I think it's been 5 or 6 years since we had our last dues increase, which is a remarkable performance. So learn to live with change, learn to realize not all of it will be good, but learn to accept it and go with the positive. Because, as I say, the most appealing part of this community is how the residents feel and enjoy the spaces that they live in.
Lauren?
The answer is yes. I think I know what makes this community great, and I will make sure that I vote on matters to keep it that way. Don is right. I think we've done a very good job in keeping our operating expenses relatively stable. What I do worry about is our reserves. We're spending a lot of money, and mostly from reserves. And I believe we need to start adding more to those reserves. The question of assessments and added reserves and saving money is a balancing act that all boards face. I'd like to see us adjust our decision-making so that it's not just a matter of the board that decides, but that we have more resident input on how we go about making those decisions. Thank you.
Paul?
As new residents look at Sienna as a place that they would like to retire, many of us have raised our families, devoted our time to our work, and we look at Sienna as the place where we come and can be active. You've got the walkers in the morning, you've got people at the pools. We have a recreation center right now, which looks like they may be refurbishing that recreation center. And I think it's only appropriate that we look at the various options. We have limited real estate, we all know that, but the room that they use for yoga and other classes is full all the time. I don't want to spend money frivolously either, but I think we owe it to the association and to the people that use the facilities to look at those alternatives. There is an outreach committee that's currently looking at all alternatives and the services that they provide. I would like to see the input from that outreach committee before anything is done. And at that point in time, we can see whether we have the resources or not to do anything else.
Jerry?
Well, that's one of the reasons I decided to run for the board, because I'm concerned about how money is being spent in here. And it seems like we spend money and we really don't get everything we should, and we don't get the bang for our buck. You've seen some people around with shirts, you know, for me, for the campaign in there. When I went and bought those shirts, I didn't just go in and say how much, and the guy told me how much, but then I negotiated with him, and you know what? I saved a lot of money. People think I spent a lot of money on those shirts, but I actually got a good deal on it. There's no reason why we can't do the same thing with everything that we do here. Need to control spending. They talk about we haven't had a dues increase for 5 years. Well, the reason for that is because when they were increased too much. They shouldn't have been increased that much when they were actually increased that amount. I mean, the proof's in the pudding. Consider the fact that we have nearly 40 pages of rules. The sad thing isn't that we have nearly 40 pages of rules, but that we need 40 pages of rules. So we have a beautiful community here. A very nice community. We're in the process, we're going to spend $500,000 to remodel the fitness center next year. There's a lot of things we can do. I mean, really fun things that won't cost us a lot of money. Things can be done. There's ways to do that. So I think we can maintain it without going crazy. I'm telling you that at some point there is going to have to be a dues increase. There's no way around it. As far as the reserve funds, I'm on the finance committee as an alternate. Reserve funds, we're in good shape on that. We're at nearly 80, actually a little over 80%. Next year they will do what they call a Class 1 reserve study. And at that point we will be able to decide, do we really have enough money in the reserves or not in there? And that will have to take a serious look at it. And this next board will have some serious things to consider. So you better have someone on there that is going to be aware of spending.
Is there another question?
You want that?
Hi guys, my name is Marilyn Stanton, and I have two concerns. One is the 40 pages of rules that are making people feel harassed. And not as happy here as we were 5 years ago, or even 3 and 4 years ago. Community feels harassed, and that's not a fun feeling. I mean, the whole feeling here has changed. Everybody talks about it. I'm at the fitness center every day. That's what people talk about. My other concern is our golf course. We've seen what's happening in Las Vegas, and I'm really concerned that we be prepared somehow if something happens to that golf course, which is very likely, that we have some way to save it so we don't get homes on our golf course. Thank you.
Don will start this series of answers.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree that this passport has kind of overreached just a bit, especially when it laid down the rules in the Rotunda area that seemed to treat us more like elderly incompetents rather than active adults, which is what this community is all about. I don't get too upset about it because I believe that the general manager will gradually relax the rules to where they're livable as time goes on. If not, the next board could take action to kind of relieve some of that. But I don't see it as a major concern, but an indication that we're trying to over-regulate ourselves. And I think I agree with that attitude. As far as the golf course, we have always been very concerned on the board about the golf course and how do we keep it healthy but make it a good neighbor. We took over a year after we'd written up an agreement with the golf course to get the owner to sign up and agree to it. Even now, they routinely violate it, and we kind of work with them because our real fear is that if we push them too hard, they're going to go under, and that's something we don't want to see happen. The only other point that I want to make is that the golf course is part of the floodplain. So if, God forbid, they do go under, the amount of housing that can be built would be fairly limited because floodplains are floodplains. You can't build around that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mark?
When we first moved here to Siena and got a copy of the CCNRs, I was surprised. There were so many rules. I read them all from the following viewpoint. If this rule wasn't there and people were abusing behavior, what the rule is talking about, is this a place where I'd want to live? And I saw the sense of all those rules. I don't think we have any frivolous rules. We've had an ad hoc committee recently go through all the rules and change them, eliminate a lot of what they thought were frivolous rules until we're down to what we have now. I think it's important that we keep our community looking the way it looks. If you have a violation of a lot of those rules, we won't look the same. I'd rather know that everyone else is living by those rules like I am to keep this community safe. Let me talk about the golf course for just a second. There's not much we can do right now. We don't know what's going to happen. But I always believe in being prepared. And one of the things I think we should do, and I had talked to the general manager and some of our board members, keep a place in the budget of next year perhaps for hiring a consultant on land development, someone who knows what options can be done with that land and what we might face. Not necessarily spend the money, but make sure that if we need to, we can bring some expertise to bear and at least know where we stand. And I agree with that. Thank you.
Paul?
I have talked to a number of people in Spanish Trails and Spanish Hills who would like to move here. They have two-story homes. And they said the reason they're not moving here is because of the rules that we have.
I do the same thing.
I was a director of a smaller community in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, and it was fairly strict also. But it was half as many pages as we have. So I think there is a legitimate concern for people moving here about the extent of the rules. And if we could do something to at least reduce those, I think it would be a worthwhile effort. In business and in other events I've been involved in, when it's less expensive to get a knowledgeable attorney involved before a problem happens than after it happens. And if the association could take a look, because I know over by the Badlands, they're looking there about building condominiums in there, so that's not that far away from us. I know there's a flood issue here and that protects us, but I think it would be a reasonable investment for the board to consult a knowledgeable attorney to find out what our options are, so we will know them should something come up.
Jerry?
Well, 40 pages of rules, that's crazy, but unfortunately, we're kind of stuck with it. And we're stuck with it for a couple of reasons. because there are, not everyone, most of the people in here, in fact, are very nice. I was talking with Claudia, who's left now, a few days ago. Claudia and I were one of the first people to move in here. I think she was the first, I think I was the second. And we remember the early days when everybody, there was a few hundred homes, everybody got along. It was like living in a real resort. I mean, it was like party time all the time, and it was very nice. Eventually, we got big enough, and you always have a few jerks move in, and they kind of spoil the pudding, if you will. And that's kind of what has happened. We've had enough people moved in that don't really care about anybody but themselves. That was one of my reasons for running it here, is to promote courtesy. And some of the things we can do, I had the idea of doing a weekly happy hour where all the residents could get together and mingle. Once you get to know people, you find out that they aren't so bad. Now, you don't have to like everybody, or actually you don't have to like anybody, but you really need to be courteous. As far as the golf course goes, it is a floodplain out there, so they'd have a problem building homes on them. There is, the CCNRs to do tie Sienna and the golf course together, so there's a lot of things there. And we do have the attorney, our attorney is actually researching the golf course and what they could or may not be able to do out there. At this point, I don't think it's an issue for Sienna. I do understand that they're doing not great, but they're doing okay. I don't think we're in a position to overly burden the golf course with the needs for Sienna. I think we need to work with them, to help them stay afloat.
Thank you. Harvey?
Maryland, in New Jersey, I was a certified planner. You were an engineer. You were also a president, I believe, of a board in California. What Jerry just said, we learned in orientation that our attorney is looking into the deeds and will advise the board. Hopefully, he said we'll get the information in 3 weeks of where we stand and what we can do if this situation should present itself to us. In terms of rules and regulations, you need it because everybody isn't very nice and everybody needs rules. However, this rule in the rotunda of the fact that the women can only bring in 6 ounces of something to eat, I think is stupid and ridiculous. The fact that they can't move a chair without asking for a staff member to move a chair, I think is stupid and ridiculous. If something should fall on the carpeting, when we bought the carpeting, we were told that the carpeting was designed so that anything could be cleaned up off of it. And I can see where the women who have been homemakers, who've raised children, who've been career women, are treated like children is simply stupid and ridiculous. And I know what Paul said and what you have told me, that there are people in a wealthier community who want to trade down, wouldn't even think of Sienna because of these rules.
Every taxpayer, God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you.
Do you have any other questions?
My name is Ralph Likeness of Angelo Tenero. My question is regarding procurement. I see that when we've had major projects in this community, there's been a lot of contention about it, a lot of people arguing, debating. I don't know if we have a good process, and I want to know what you think about who would write an RFP specifically. Who would you have write an RFP for these major projects? And who do you think should be a project manager that represents the homeowners directly for those projects? I'm going to add one comment that's kind of feeding, and I probably shouldn't do that. I should listen to what you think from the ground up. But I don't know if we have enough staff that actually can do that. So please answer that question.
Thank you, Ralph.
Okay.
That goes to Arn.
We talked about this last night, and I hear you very clearly. We hire a management company CCMC to do those things, to help us prepare RFPs and to oversee projects that are going on. Some of us feel they do a good job and some of us don't. I always feel that when we're on major projects and they have a project manager on their side, we need to have a really good contract officer on ours to watch to make sure that what they're doing is what they're supposed to be doing and they're doing it right. I don't feel in some of these large projects we are represented well, that we're relying too much on the contractors. If we can't get that expertise from CCMC, we ought to go out and hire a contract officer that knows what they're doing, because it's important to have our interests represented. The same thing is true with the RFPs. We've gone round and round on some of these RFPs, and we need to do a better job. If we can't do it in-house, let's hire someone that can help us do it right. Thank you.
Paul?
I'm on the property committee, and I've got to tell you, it's a real joy to work with Skip and to work with Gunnar. They have gone through, even the alternates on the property committee are experienced contractors in their previous life. If you take a look at the cement contractor, Gunnar has probably spent 80 to 100 hours along with 2 other people on the property committee going through and not only preparing a RFP for the concrete, but also a standard to be used. We were paying vendors in advance of when we had to pay them. We were not getting things in writing. We were not getting the warranties. And Gunnar and Skip and the members of the property committee have established a standard to be used for all projects going forward. We need to have things in writing so that if there's a warranty problem, we can go back and we can have the vendor provide the services to repair whatever needs to be repaired. And things have to be in writing. We can't do things verbally. So I'm happy with what is happening on the RFPs. I'm not happy for the way that they were in the past, but I feel more comfortable going forward that the property committee will give a good RFP to the finance committee. I also know that we are hiring outside vendors to come in and to check the core samples on each pouring to make sure we're getting exactly what we think we're getting. So we're tightening up that procedure, and I appreciate you asking that question.
Jerry?
Well, I agree with what Arn said. We do have the staff and CCMC, the management company, that does a lot of this. The committees also do a lot of this, and I find that we do bring in experts where we need to. Root barriers is a perfect example, and I didn't know what a root barrier was. You know, they're talking about concrete, and so I actually went and researched it to figure out, okay, what is a root barrier? And I thought, well, you just lay down something and then you pour the concrete on it, but that's not the case. What they actually do is dig straight down by the edge of the sidewalk and put in a plastic sheet to prevent the roots from growing anywhere under it, which could have an effect on plants. I mean, I'm not I have a brown thumb, so you can't ask me about what keeps plants growing or not growing. So they are actually going out and getting experts on that. So that's just one example of, and I think it is being done. I think they are getting the experts that are needed when they're needed. Again, it gets expensive to hire an expert for every little thing. And at some point, you got to say,